go live. There we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. We are here now in the stage for our final keynote of the day. So I'm really happy to be able to introduce Simon Schmincke. He's here with us. He's the general partner at Creandum. Simon is a developer at heart and a venture capitalist in mind. German-born, he's gained operational experience building 3 companies for Rocket Internet between Asia, Latin America, and the US. His investment career at Earlybird Venture Capital. He joined Creandum in 2016. Fintech is one of his major focus areas, and throughout his VC career, he's led the investments in N26, Taxfix, Billie, Tide, and most recently, SEON. So Simon is going to be talking to us a little bit about founders, operators, turned investors, and it's going to be super exciting. So thanks so much for being here with us, Simon. Take it away.
Mary, appreciate the introduction. I'm assuming you guys had a fantastic packed day already with content. I saw the agenda that Csongor sent over earlier, and it's amazing to see what's happening in Hungary in an ecosystem that we as Creandum have only recently been active, but we believe with Shaper 3D, with Craft, and with SEON, all 3 of them will either have been on stage at this point or join tomorrow. We feel we found already three amazing groups of entrepreneurs that are building something exceptional. But today I'm going to speak about the intersection of entrepreneurship, of operator turned investor. And I brought a couple of slides, but I'm mostly interested in hearing your questions after my little presentation here. So fire them along in the chat, and I think Mary is going to collect them, and I'm looking forward to that session as well. So I'm quickly going to share my screen here. Bear with me. This is only my second Hopin conference. You should see my screen now, and I'm going full screen here. I hope this works. Mary, I can't see you now, but as long as you don't jump in on stage and interrupt me, I'm assuming that everything works. With that being said, super happy to tell you a little bit about what it means for an operator to turn investor, and I want to look at whether that is great, whether that's helpful to be an operator that turned investor, or whether it's not helpful. And as usual, the answer is depends, but I'm going to come to that in a second. Maybe before we jump on the topic of today, I quickly give you guys a background about who I am and what we as Creandum are doing. We're a bunch of folks between Stockholm, San Francisco, and I'm based in Berlin. And we're running a couple of early stage venture funds. Today we manage roughly $1 billion, and the funds invest tickets between $500,000 and 10 in early stage companies between the US and Europe. Lately, a lot in Budapest. And then we follow these companies with more money over time, sometimes up to 30-40 million euros in a single company. But usually we serve on the board, and we try to be helpful, try to be advisors to the entrepreneurs, and follow the journey of these companies over time. We've been doing that now for almost 20 years. This is only some of the companies that the funds have invested in. I just realized 10 minutes before going on stage here that this is an outdated slide by now. And again, the 3 companies that are also featured here in this conference, Shaper 3D, Craft, and SEON, those logos are missing here, and shame on me. So I apologize if any of you guys from the teams are in the audience. I will update that slide for the next presentation. But yeah, this gives you a little bit of a feeling of the companies that we've been involved with. Most likely, companies like Spotify, Klarna, iZettle, Bolt, but then also maybe recently Trade Republic, a large neo broker in Germany, and a couple of other quite successful companies where we were lucky enough to join them at the very beginning of their journey, and then followed them sometimes 10, 12, 13, 14 years until the entrepreneurs decide to either go public or sell the company. like gives you a little bit of a feeling of the range and the type of companies that we get involved with. And yeah, that luckily, and this is the braggy slide here, what I need to share, that we've been voted Venture Capital Fund of the Year 2019 and also 2020, and the vote currently is on to become Venture Capital Fund 2021. So we're hoping to update that slide next year with another date. But yeah, today I want to talk about an operator turned investor. Is that great or not so great? And obviously, my view is biased because I have been an operator before. I used to run a company called HelloFresh in North America, which is a big grocery meal kit delivery service now listed in Frankfurt, Germany. And I was the founder and CFO of a company called Foodpanda, which was a restaurant aggregator, which we later sold for $650 million to Delivery Hero, which today is live in Germany in the quick commerce space, but it's a company that I built up all over Southeast Asia, in 9 countries, which now operates in many more. So I've been an operator before, but at one point about 8-9 years ago, I decided to switch sides. I thought that what VCs were doing in the companies that I was operating in was really interesting, and I thought I'll give it a go. That debate whether people with an operational background are the better investors or not has been long debated in this industry, and up front, I don't think so. I don't think you need to be a great entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur even, to be a good investor, but it helps, and I'll look into that. The problem that I see in the boardroom which I share with many other investors of other great firms, is often that those individuals who have very successfully built companies in the past, they believe that because they have been great operators, they are now great investors. They often believe that that one leads to the other, and I can wholeheartedly tell you that's not true. One does not simply build a company in the 90s and still have relevant insights. Or what that means is that for us who were operators many moons ago, it is so easy to fall into the trap and believe that the knowledge and the experience which was relevant and true some time ago still applies today. And I've seen so many times that people start discussions with, but when I was still an entrepreneur, we used to do it like that. You should do that as well. And that's a problem, because consumers change. The people you sell your product to today are different individuals than they were 10 years ago or 15 or 20 years ago. And the competition is different today. If you look at markets developing over time, a market that you as an operator were successful in, even if it's the same market that your new investor operates in, the market looks completely different. The playing field is differently. And finally, the technology that you as an operator, I as an operator use to be in the forefront of what I was doing 10 years ago simply is no longer relevant in most cases. So these 4 things are elements that many of the operational investors that I meet in the boardroom like to forget or overlook, that the world has moved on, and only because you were successful as an operator in a certain market, addressing a certain group of consumers with a certain technology, it's very dangerous to believe that knowledge, if you only apply it to your new investment, will lead to the same success as you as an operator had many years ago. So that is the trap that I see operators fall into, that they over apply their experience and their belief how things should be done to their new investment. And on the opposite, I also see entrepreneurs listen to these operator turned investors and believe, yeah, if I only do what that guy did 10 years ago, then my company will also be successful. But the reality is no one knows how you, as an early stage entrepreneur, in the fall of 2021 in your market will be successful. No one knows. Only you can find that out. So I push the young entrepreneurs that I work with oftentimes and say, don't look too much into what your investors have been successful in. Find your own way. So that's the trap. And that's the message that I want to give you as entrepreneurs. Of you probably likely some in the audience here today is, if your mentor, if your investor, if your advisor has been successful with something in the past, don't extrapolate too much of that success onto what you believe will lead to success in your business. And that's the trap that some operators who turn investors fall into. But the good news is you don't need to be a successful entrepreneur to become a great investor. There are many examples of great investors who haven't been either successful entrepreneurs or operational at all. Because ultimately what we do as investors is we try to identify a match between great individuals, a great technology, and a big problem that hopefully is operating in a large enough market to build something. But that knowledge necessarily doesn't come from you being an operator. So for those of you younger in the audience who are considering to become an investor and who now ask themselves, can I only become an investor if I've been operationally successful? And I can tell the good news is no, you don't need to. It's not the only way to become a great investor if you've built $1 billion company. I'll tell you in a second why it helps, but upfront, my message is it's not necessary. So let's look into it. And the reason why it does help is that not all experience that you can win or you gain as an operator is irrelevant. And if you look at what's most important as an investor, that you can help your young entrepreneurs or your aspiring entrepreneurs with, I think it's 4 things. It's leadership, it's hiring, it's understanding what good execution looks like, and it's anxiety. And I come to the last point in a second. But ultimately, if you start a new company and you bring an investor on board, what you're trying to understand is, are you a good leader? Are you building a company culture? Are you inspiring your new hires? And are you building a leadership culture that works? And although leadership styles and leadership, what is successful leadership, does change over time, I still believe if you have been someone who has led a team through tough times as an operator, I think you're in a better position to help a new entrepreneur understand if he or she is on the right track to becoming a great leader. That's the one thing that I think helps me today in my job, that I was an operator in my today role as a day-to-day investor. I think hiring is another one. If as an operator you have hired a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand people, or at least had that amount of interviews, you become better at judging people and their skills, and you have a mad sympathy for entrepreneurs who are struggling in hiring. Hiring is one of the most important skill set that you guys need to develop to become successful entrepreneurs. And the fact that I've hired hundreds of people in my life and I've done thousands of interviews in my life helps me understand the challenges that my entrepreneurs have, but also allows me to interview better for you. That's something maybe some of you don't know, but we as investors actively help interview C-level candidates pretty much every week for our portfolio companies. I have an interview tomorrow at lunchtime with a CFO candidate for one of my new investments. And I believe that because I have already interviewed so many CFOs in my life, my job tomorrow will be a little bit easier, and hopefully the result of my judgment will be a little bit better. So yeah, if you've been an operator, hiring advice is easier. But ultimately, it comes down to execution, right? And if you have been in the trenches, if you've grinded all-nighters with your idea on your project before, then helping and judging those who are now executing on their ideas, I think it's easier for you. You know if someone is really detail-oriented, product fascinated, executing mad on their idea if you've been doing the same before. So I think that helps if you've been an operator. But then finally, and I didn't know if I should write this down, but I would be surprised if not most of you who are entrepreneurs have a lot of anxiety, have a lot of fear, have a lot of struggle, have a lot of tough times in your job, because entrepreneurship is freaking hard. And if you have an investor on your side that had these sleepless nights and those fears, and then why is this not working type of feeling that all of you probably have throughout the journey of your company, then I think it helps. So I think it's helpful to have an investor on your side who has felt what you have felt in the past or still feeling, the anxiety, the stress. So yeah, I think it helps to have an operator in your team. But then again, to be a commercially successful investor, no, you don't need to. You don't need to have all that. And I brought you a small picture. Many people who don't know a lot about venture capital always think that the Pep Guardiola here is the VC, the guy that like talks about the strategy and tells the team what to do. But that's completely wrong. That's the CEO's job. The VC is the guy that's also somehow part of the team, who's like trying to put the tools, in this case, the shoes and the jerseys, in order for you to play in, right? So the VC is part of it, but only like a teeny tiny part of your success. And if you ask yourself, probably you would prefer a guy in your team who knows what game you're playing, right? And entrepreneurship it's a long journey. So I think the 4 bullets before make it more clear why yeah, it does help if your investor has been operational. So the bad news after the good news is, yeah, it helps to have an operational experience. So for those of you in the audience who want to become investors, yeah, it's not too bad if you have some operational experience. It's not required, as I said before, but you will be taken more serious by those entrepreneurs who you want to work with. And I can tell you, in today's funding environment, if you want to be a good investor, pretty much every deal is competitive. So we are on every single deal that Creandum is trying to invest in, we're fighting against other investors who also want to invest. So the entrepreneurs have the choice between investor 1, 2, or 3. And if someone comes along and who can tell a lot of war stories and who has a better feeling for hiring, leadership, execution, because he or she has been an operator before, you need to work extra hard as an investor who doesn't bring that to the table to convince an entrepreneur that you're the right partner for him or her. So yeah, it helps to have operational experience as an investor is ultimately my message. So 20 minutes in, I hope this was somehow interesting for you. Yeah, Mary, is there any question that are coming from the audience? Anything that we should double click on based on that presentation?
Yeah, thanks. There, over here on the stage tab, there's a Q&A section, and we got 2 questions so far. But if anybody has other questions for Simon, now is the time. You can just go ahead and leave these here in the Q&A. So one question: what about the other way around? So can investors become good?
That's of course, that's a question that I didn't double tap on. It happens. There are examples of great investors turned even greater entrepreneurs. Just today, I actually spoke to a partner of a renowned venture capital firm that just 2 months ago quit his job as a partner, at a well-paid partner at that firm, and who's now starting a new business. And I'm sure he's going to be successful. Why is that? Because over the last years, he's seen so many mistakes across the portfolio of his fund that person probably won't do again. So yes, you're starting after you've worked with many entrepreneurs over many years. You're starting at a little bit of a higher level, an unfair advantage, because you've seen many people fail, and you probably won't do these mistakes. But let's not fool ourselves. Innovating and building a new product is still equally hard for an old investor than for someone who doesn't have it. So yeah, in a certain area, especially around fundraising and around team composition, you've seen great teams many times, and then you know what good teams look like. But it's, by the way, no guarantee to become a successful entrepreneur.
I think there's also a personality aspect to it, right? Maybe, or I don't know how you feel about that, but I think it's hard to have, or in my mind anyway, the successful startup entrepreneur, you need to have this kind of grit and tenacity and have this vision that you can be a leader. And maybe it's not a guarantee that all investors would have that in their wheelhouse.
We like to believe we do, but you're probably right, Mary.
Well, you started from the other side though, so you can say that you were one first.
Hey, I can tell you, I have 1 or 2 colleagues who haven't been as entrepreneurial in our team, and their grit and tenacity clearly beats me. So I don't see a correlation here.
We have a couple other questions. So one, how often are VCs involved in hiring for their companies? I think you mentioned that you're having an interview tomorrow. Yeah.
So the answer is, as usual in life, it depends, and depends on the stage of the company. But I think it's fair to say for any C-level role in my portfolio at Creandum, so that's right now 11 companies, I think. Depending on the number of other investors on the board, but especially in the beginning, I interview all final candidates. And interviewing doesn't necessarily mean I want to check if you made the right hire or about to make the right hire here. Quite the opposite. Oftentimes, my job is to simply sell the opportunity. So here's the investor who tells you as the candidate why this is a great job to choose from. Because just like companies, also great talent has other opportunities to go somewhere. So if you allow me to spend 30 minutes with you, help you choose my portfolio company over someone else's portfolio company and join us, then I've helped my entrepreneurs just as much as checking out if the candidate is a great candidate, in making sure the candidate chooses us or the portfolio company as their next gig. So it's a two-way street. But yeah, we are involved in most C-level hires.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other question, what do you think about government-backed funds dominating Hungary and other CEE markets?
Yeah, that's a political question. The question is what dominating means, right? But I've seen great government financed programs in other ecosystems which add a lot of value. I specifically know the ones well in Denmark with Vækstfonden, which is a big government-backed both early and late stage fund. They also do credit. And then there's a program that I know well in Finland where the government doubles basically any private investor's money in a certain technology category. So you can't just copycat McDonald's, but it has to be a tech startup. The government backs that with a very generous loan that you basically never have to pay back, or at very good terms. And these are programs which I think are very smart by the governments of Denmark and Finland, where they drive innovation and where they help people risk part of their career to build something which is then great for the countries of Denmark and Finland. So I don't know too much about the government-backed venture capital scene in Hungary, but in general, I think it's a smart way of governments to support entrepreneurship, to create jobs, to drive innovation. So only because it's government-backed money, I don't necessarily think it's bad. And maybe as a last piece here, if you look at if you look at the European venture capital landscape, you would be surprised how much EU money is invested in many of the funds through the EIF.
Right.
So even though you think you get money from a private fund, you would be surprised what percentage of that money is actually coming through the EIF program, which in return I think is smart, because it's better than to give it to farmers and to whatnot. We're creating massive amount of technology jobs here.
So you're saying as long as the structure of the program or the funding is okay, then it can work. So it's not a deal breaker.
Do I believe that any state is a better investor than any other? I absolutely do not think so. Yeah. But I find it hard to believe that the best investors work for state organizations in no country, independently from that's not Hungary specific.
Yeah. Okay. If I want to raise from international investors, do I need to flip the company, or would you be open to investing in a Hungarian entity?
We would be open to invest in a Hungarian company, but I think you should still flip, because now that I've experienced the Hungarian law, I can tell you it's so far from being standard or easy or that I would absolutely advise you to go anywhere else. That means the UK, that means Delaware, that means Germany, for whatever sake. But is it required to get funding? Absolutely not. If you have a good reason and you convince an investor and say, no, here's the reason why we should do that, then yeah. But the model where you have a holding company, the UK holding or a Delaware holding, and then you have a local entity where you employ the local people, I think both serves you with national pride, and that you have an entity that creates value in your home country, which is something that I think that is not to be taken lightly. But at the same time, you're much easier, you have much more standardized processes. And yeah, you will meet investors who will not invest in Budapest. So we are one, or in Hungary, we are one that has done it. But in most cases, also in the companies that I mentioned before, the entrepreneurs also realized that, yeah, it probably makes sense to, if you want to build a global company, to work under a legislation framework which is more globally standardized. Mm. And if you can choose, if you haven't built your entity, absolutely do it where it's standardized. I mean, the cost to you is negligible, only because you save a couple of thousand if you do it locally. In the long run, if you want to build a global footprint company or even a continental company, absolutely do it in a more standardized legal framework.
Yeah. I have one last question, if you'll indulge me. So we heard from Billie earlier, the founder of Kraft, one of your companies. Yeah. And he, he's a famous, operator, and then he also had a stint in as an investor, and now he's kind of, back on the operator side. So, and I've seen this sort of pendulum swing. And I was curious for you, having done both quite successfully, now you've been, pretty solidly an investor for the past 5 years or more. Do you ever feel the itch to get back in the game and run the company yourself, or are you happy where you are? Or maybe you can, give us an insight there.
Yeah, good question, and a fair one. The answer is no, I don't have the itch, because Creandum is a massive startup in itself. We're expanding right now into another country. We're building both bigger funds and more products. Our tech stack sucks. I'm constantly working on creating more internal tools and products. I'm hiring people. We're expanding. We're becoming bigger. So all the stuff that I liked as an operator, I still have here as a VC. So Creandum isn't one of these big multi-hundred private equity firm. It's a small 30 people, move fast, win excessively type of organization, where the kick that I got out of being operational, I get here as an investor. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, if I look at the operators in our portfolio, there are plenty of them. They would eat me for lunch as operators, so they're just better than me. So now, after having the blessing or the honor to work with some of the best entrepreneurs globally, do I want to compete with those guys? I don't think so. So I'm very happy doing what I'm doing here. I'm very fulfilled what I'm doing here.
The Ned Stark gif comes back, or the meme comes back into my mind. Maybe. Yeah.
No, I'm a happy camper, and I have mad respect for those who, who are better operators than me. Great.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This was amazing, very informative. Thanks so much for sharing your insights. And we hope to see many more Hungarian and regional companies at Creandum in the future.
We hope so too.
All right.
Thanks so much.
It was a pleasure. Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.